Autumn 1941, on the heights of besieged Sevastopol. A chill pre-dawn frost bites at Lieutenant Lyudmila Pavlichenko's cheeks as she lies prone in a ruined cemetery, clutching her Mosin-Nagant rifle. For hours, an unseen German sniper has kept her pinned down amid shattered tombstones, each side knowing that a single flinch means death. Suddenly, a muzzle flash. A bullet smashes into a stone inches from Lyudmila's head. She fights the urge to gasp and silently slips back from her firing nest. Crawling on her belly, she repositions amid thorny brambles and fallen gravestones, ignoring the burning pain of cuts on her hands. Snow begins to fall, dusting her dark hair as she waits, unblinking. Minutes drag into hours in this lethal duel of nerves. She's been locked in this standoff since before dawn, but her nerves remain ice-steady. Cold and hunger gnaw at her, but Pavlichenko remains as still as the dead around her, finger on the trigger. At last, the enemy grows impatient. Lyudmila spots a telltale movement, a helmet rising ever so slightly for a better look. In that instant, her crosshairs lock on her forehead. She exhales and squeezes the trigger. A single rifle crack echoes over the silent gravestones. When Soviet scouts later inspect the foe's body, they discover she has killed one of Germany's elite snipers, a man credited with over 400 kills since Dunkirk. It was Pavlichenko's most celebrated duel, one more lethal victory in a career already filled with them. By the spring of the 1942, this 25-year-old history student turned soldier had become a legend on the Eastern Front, a legend the world would soon know as Lady Death. Years before she earned that chilling nickname, Lyudmila Pavlichenko lived an ordinary life in Soviet Ukraine. Born in 1916 in a village near Kiev, she was a fiercely competitive tomboy who loved proving that girls could match the boys at any game. In her teens, she joined a shooting club, where she quickly became a crack shot, earning the Voroshilov sharpshooter badge for her excellent marksmanship. She also excelled in school and athletics, running on her university's track team while studying history at Kiev University, with dreams of becoming a teacher. By 1941, 24-year-old Lyudmila had already lived a full life. She'd married at 16 and had a son, then divorced and returned to her studies. When Nazi Germany invaded the Soviet Union in June 1941, Pavlichenko was in her fourth year of college. As Hitler's forces thrust deep into Ukraine, she felt compelled to defend her homeland. She rushed to enlist at the Odessa military recruiting office, one of thousands of Soviet women volunteering for combat. The officers urged her to serve as a nurse, but Lyudmila bluntly refused. She had civilian marksmanship training and wanted to fight as an infantry soldier. To prove her skills, she was handed a Mosin-Nagant rifle and pointed toward two enemy Romanian soldiers on a distant hillside. Pavlichenko took a deep breath, aimed, and shot them both. Impressed, the Red Army commanders accepted her into the 25th Chapayev Rifle Division as a sniper. Pavlichenko even left her young son Rostislav in the care of her parents when she departed for the front, a profound personal sacrifice few knew about at the time. Now she was one of about 2,000 female snipers in the Red Army, of whom only approximately 500 survived the war. She would soon justify her commander's faith in blood and fire. Pavlichenko's first real test came in the siege of Odessa on the Black Sea coast. On August 8, 1941, the German-led assault began with thunderous artillery barrages and waves of infantry charging the Soviet trenches. Private Pavlichenko huddled in a foxhole beside her comrades, heart pounding as she gripped her rifle. In theory, she knew how to shoot humans, but now that real enemies were closing in, she found her finger frozen on the trigger. Suddenly, a crack of enemy fire rang out, and a young Soviet soldier next to Lyudmila collapsed. His head exploded in a pink mist of blood and bone. It was a boy she'd befriended on the train to the front. Shock and horror washed over her. After that, she said later, nothing could stop me. The very next day, Lyudmila crawled out with a spotter into no man's land, determined to strike back. They set up a hidden post in some scrub brush outside the Soviet perimeter. Before long, 3 German soldiers came into view, cautiously moving through the trees. This time, Pavlichenko's hands were steady and her eye sharp. Through her scope, she tracked the lead German and fired. The man dropped instantly. As the second enemy started to react, she worked the bolt and shot him as well, the bullet knocking him down before he could take cover. The third soldier fled in panic, disappearing into the woods before Lyudmila could line up another shot. Her spotter was stunned. There was, he observed, no tremor or hesitation on Pavlichenko's face. "Russia is going to be talking about Lyudmila Pavlichenko," he whispered in awe. As the weeks passed, Pavlichenko adapted to the sniper's life. She learned to move like a ghost along the front, often crawling out before dawn to lie in wait for hours, sometimes 18 hours at a stretch, in a camouflaged firing position. She subsisted on dry bread and water, ignoring hunger, thirst, and cramped limbs as she peered through her scope. She became adept at sniper tactics, timing her shots to thunderclaps or artillery booms so the enemy wouldn't hear them, never firing twice from the same spot, and setting up decoys, like a helmet on a stick or even a mannequin dummy, to draw enemy fire and expose German snipers' locations. Each day, Pavlichenko stalked enemy officers, machine gunners and observers, patiently waiting for the perfect shot. Her mantra was one shot, one kill, and kill she did. She might remain motionless all day and fire only a single bullet, but that one bullet would mean one dead invader. Pavlichenko's tally climbed relentlessly. Within a month of her arrival, her count stood at 100 confirmed kills, an almost unheard of tally for a rookie sniper. Rumours of the deadly young woman spread through the ranks. When Lyudmila occasionally came off the line to rest, hardened infantrymen would gape in disbelief at this slip of a girl in baggy fatigues, amazed that such a petite, pretty woman was the dreaded sniper who had terrorized the Germans. Pavlichenko's deadly reputation only grew as the battle for Odessa dragged into autumn. On one mission, she climbed a tree in a cemetery to scout for targets, using the height for a better view. No sooner had she settled into the branches than 2 rifle shots cracked past her head, barely missing. An enemy sniper had spotted her. Without hesitating, Lyudmila flung herself from the tree, dropping 12 feet and crashing onto the ground between 2 tombstones. Pain shot up her spine, but she forced herself to lie motionless and play dead for hours until after dark. Only then did she crawl inch by inch back to Soviet lines, escaping the sniper's trap. By late September, heavy rains had turned Odessa's trenches into rivers of mud. Pavlichenko endured it all. Cold, wet, constant shell fire, never relenting in her hunt. On October 9th, 1941, amidst a furious bombardment, a shell fragment tore a gash across her scalp. Blood soaked her face and uniform, but Lyudmila bandaged her head and kept fighting. When her company's commander was killed and the unit began to waver, the wounded Pavlichenko took charge to rally her fellow snipers. A political officer, desperate to stiffen spines, pointed at Lyudmila, face streaked with blood, eyes blazing with determination, and shouted, "Look at this woman! Pavlichenko has the balls of a man!" The intended compliment was crude, but her fearless example worked. The Soviets held the line, and only then did Lyudmila agree to be evacuated to a field hospital. By the time Odessa was finally evacuated on October 16th, 1941, Senior Sergeant Pavlichenko had 187 confirmed kills to her name. In just 2.5 months of combat, she had more than earned her place among the Red Army's most effective snipers. After Odessa, Pavlichenko and her division were shipped across the Black Sea to help defend the strategic port of Sevastopol in Crimea. The siege of Sevastopol would last over 8 grueling months, October 1941, July 1942. By now, Lyudmila Pavlichenko's exploits were becoming the stuff of legend, and not just in the Soviet Union. The Soviet press turned her into a propaganda heroine, telling citizens, "If this beautiful young woman can endure, how can we at home complain about hardships?" At the same time, the German Wehrmacht grew obsessed with eliminating her. They knew Lady Death by name and feared her lethal skill. German loudspeakers echoed across the lines with taunts and bribes. "Lyudmila Pavlichenko, come over to us. We will give you plenty of chocolate and make you a German officer," one broadcast teased. She ignored them. As her kill count mounted, the Nazi propaganda shifted to fury. "If we catch you, we will tear you into 309 pieces and scatter them to the winds." Pavlichenko only smiled upon hearing this, pleased that the enemy accurately knew her record, By then she truly had over 300 confirmed kills. She had earned a battlefield promotion to lieutenant, and tales of the mysterious lady sniper were spreading far and wide. At Sevastopol, Pavlichenko often partnered with another top Soviet sniper, Sergeant Major Leonid Kitsenko, a decorated veteran who had recovered from wounds sustained at Odessa. Fighting side by side, the duo became a sniper team so effective that commanders said they were worth an entire company of infantry. Pavlichenko moved constantly from sector to sector, wherever the fighting was fiercest, using her keen eye and steady hand to pick off enemy officers and machine gunners to stall the German advance. The sniper contingent in Sevastopol was relatively small, under 300 shooters, but they wreaked havoc on the invaders, inflicting an estimated 10,000 German casualties by sniping alone. Lieutenant Pavlichenko was the highest-scoring sniper of them all. German High Command placed special bounties on her head, and elite enemy marksmen were deployed to hunt the Russian bitch from hell, as they bitterly nicknamed her. On one rainy day, after Lyudmila picked off a German radio operator with a brilliant long-distance shot through the drizzle, a shocked German officer stood up in his trench and shouted, "Lyudmila, leave your Bolshevik friends and come join us." She promptly answered with another pull of the trigger. The officer fell dead, his invitation rejected. In this wartime photo, Lyudmila Pavlichenko crawls into position with her sniper rifle during the defense of Sevastopol in June 1942. By that point in the siege, she had recorded at least 257 kills and earned a promotion to lieutenant. Pavlichenko's official total would ultimately climb to 309 confirmed kills by the time she was withdrawn from combat. Throughout the siege, Pavlichenko was relentless. She engaged in sniper duels regularly, and she won every single one. Her most famous duel, likely the one in the cemetery described earlier, dragged on for 3 days of cat-and-mouse stalking. For hours on end, Lyudmila lay motionless, scanning for any sign of her hidden adversary. The duel was a pure test of patience and nerve. Ultimately, the enemy sniper made one move too many, as Lyudmila later put it, and a single crack from her Mosin-Nagant ended the contest. That foe became one of 36 enemy snipers Pavlichenko eliminated during the war. Through the winter of 1941-42, she kept hunting. In the miserable cold, she lost weight and grew thin and gaunt, streaks of white appearing in her raven-black hair from stress. Friends from her pre-war life would hardly have recognized the worn, steely-eyed figure she had become. Still, her trigger never faltered. In November 1941, during a massive German assault, she recorded her 200th kill. By May 1942, her confirmed count had reached 257. Each new milestone only increased the German determination to destroy her, and Soviet determination to keep her alive. Amid the hellish fighting, Lyudmila managed to find a few moments of personal solace. In early 1942, she and Leonid Kitsenko, her sniper partner, grew close, their shared dangers kindling a deep bond. The two snipers were married sometime during the siege, exchanging vows in the midst of war, but their time together would be tragically brief. As the Wehrmacht tightened its noose around Sevastopol in the spring of 1942, Kitsenko was struck and killed by enemy fire. Lyudmila was devastated. Comrades noted that after Leonid's death, her calm professionalism gave way to flashes of intense anger. At a meeting with her sniper unit in late May, the grief-stricken Pavlichenko vowed to avenge her fallen husband. At that point, her kill count stood at 257. Lyudmila promised she would reach 300 within days. She delivered on that promise. By early June 1942, as the siege neared its end, Pavlichenko had logged 309 confirmed kills, a number that cemented her status as the deadliest female sniper in history. That June, Sevastopol was on the brink of defeat. The Germans launched an overwhelming final offensive, backed by hundreds of aircraft and heavy guns. For days, the city was pounded into dust. 570 tons of bombs rained down in one 5-day span. Pavlichenko fought on through the maelstrom, but there was little even she could do to turn the tide. During one barrage, a mortar shell exploded near her position, and Lyudmila was severely wounded. Shrapnel tore into her face just below her left eye. It was her 4th combat injury, and this one was grave. By now, Soviet High Command viewed Pavlichenko as too valuable to lose. Unwilling to risk her capture or death, they ordered the badly wounded Lyudmila evacuated from Sevastopol by submarine in late June, just days before the fortress city fell to the Germans. Pavlichenko was reluctant to leave her comrades, but she had no choice. Her war on the front lines was over. In 11 months of combat, she had amassed 309 confirmed kills, though her unofficial tally may have been higher. At just 25 years old, she had more confirmed kills than nearly any sniper in the world. The Red Army had new plans for Lady Death, plans that would make her not only a military hero but a worldwide icon. Pavlichenko's wartime heroics were all the more remarkable because she fought not just the enemy, but also sexism and doubt from within her own ranks. The Soviet Union was more progressive than most in deploying women in combat. About 2,000 women served as snipers, but old attitudes didn't disappear overnight. When Lyudmila first tried to enlist, officials saw a petite young woman and pushed her to be a nurse, assuming a girl had no place in frontline fighting. Even after she proved her mettle at Odessa, some male officers and comrades were sceptical. There were no tailored women's uniforms, so Pavlichenko and her female peers were issued oversized men's fatigues and had their hair roughly shorn short. A few men grumbled that women didn't belong in a sniper's hide. Pavlichenko set them straight with her actions. She outshot everyone. She saved lives. Before long, the doubters were won over by Mila's skill and coolness under fire. She endured some backhanded compliments, like that political commissar shouting she had the balls of a man. But she understood the intent behind them. In a male-dominated army, Lyudmila Pavlichenko demanded respect the only way that mattered, by being the best. By the end of her frontline service, her comrades saw her not as a woman or a curiosity, but simply as a superbly skilled Soviet soldier who had more than earned their admiration. Pulled from combat, the legendary Lady Death was about to become the face of her nation abroad. In late summer 1942, after recovering from her wounds, Pavlichenko was sent to the United States on a unique mission. The Soviet leadership hoped this battle-hardened young lieutenant could help persuade the Western Allies to launch a much-needed second front against Hitler. Pavlichenko arrived in Washington, D.C. in September 1942 as part of a Soviet delegation. She had the distinction of being the first Soviet citizen welcomed at the White House. President Franklin D. Roosevelt himself invited her to meet him. In the White House, Lyudmila, dressed in her olive drab Red Army uniform and weighed down with medals, was introduced to First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt. The First Lady was charmed by the quiet, serious young woman who had come from the battlefields of Russia. Despite Lyudmila's halting English and Eleanor's non-existent Russian, the two women struck up an instant rapport. Eleanor sensed the depth of suffering behind Pavlichenko's eyes, later writing, "There is something very charming about the young Russian woman. She has suffered something which is universal and binds all the world together regardless of language." Moved by Pavlichenko's courage, Mrs. Roosevelt invited her to accompany her on a speaking tour across America. Lyudmila Pavlichenko, center, arrives in Washington, D.C. in late 1942, greeted by U.S. Supreme Court Justice Robert Jackson, left, and First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt, right. Pavlichenko's visit made her the first Soviet citizen ever received at the White House. The Roosevelts hosted her as part of a publicity tour to rally Allied support for opening a second front in Europe. Travelling from city to city alongside Eleanor Roosevelt, Lieutenant Pavlichenko addressed huge crowds and gave interviews, sharing her experiences as a woman in combat. Over the next few months, she spoke in 43 American cities, making the case for unity against fascism and for opening a second front in Europe. At first, the American public was simply curious about this exotic figure, a young woman in a Soviet uniform who reportedly had 309 Nazi kills to her name. The press, unused to the idea of female war heroes, often treated Pavlichenko as a novelty. Rather than ask about her tactics or battlefield experiences, reporters posed shallow, condescending questions. Was she allowed to wear makeup on the front line? She replied wryly that a sniper in a foxhole had little time for lipstick. Did she curl her hair? Why did she still wear a long skirt as part of her uniform? Didn't she know American women prefer shorter skirts? One article even suggested her uniform made her look fat. Pavlichenko was taken aback. "I am amazed at the kind of questions put to me by the women press correspondents in Washington," she confessed. "Don't they know there is a war? She vented that, "Now I am looked upon a little as a curiosity, a subject for newspaper headlines. In the Soviet Union, I'm looked upon as a citizen, as a fighter, as a soldier for my country." Before long, Pavlichenko's no-nonsense demeanour won over the Americans. She learned to push back against the sexist trivialities. The turning point came in Chicago, where she addressed a rally of thousands. Clad in her military uniform, the diminutive sniper stepped up to the microphones and, instead of the polite speech drafted for her, delivered a fiery improvisation. "Gentlemen, I am 25 years old and I have killed 309 fascist invaders by now," Pavlichenko declared in a steady voice. "Don't you think, gentlemen, that you have been hiding behind my back for too long?" For a moment the crowd was stunned, then an eruption of applause. Her bold challenge made headlines. No one had ever spoken to American men quite like that. Overnight, Lyudmila Pavlichenko became an international celebrity and a symbol of the Allied fight against Nazi tyranny. The US press finally began referring to her by her famous nickname Lady Death, now with genuine respect. During her American tour, Pavlichenko did more than plead for military aid. She also became an unlikely advocate for women's rights and social equality. In her speeches, she highlighted how the Red Army made no distinction between male and female soldiers, and how in her unit, people of all nationalities fought side by side. "Our women have been on a basis of complete equality long before the war," she reminded listeners, implicitly urging American women to demand the same. She pointed out that black and white soldiers served together in her country's ranks, a subtle critique of America's segregation. Her words carried weight. Here was a woman who had literally fought Nazis face to face, telling Americans that unity and equality were also powerful weapons. She even inspired American pop culture. Folk singer Woody Guthrie penned a song titled Miss Pavlichenko in 1942 to honour her, singing of the girl with 300 Nazis felled by your gun. Hollywood took notice too. In Los Angeles, movie legend Charlie Chaplin met Lyudmila and gallantly kissed her hand, quipping, "It's quite remarkable that this small, delicate hand killed Nazis by the 100. Everyone, it seemed, wanted to shake the hand of Lady Death. She was feted with gifts, driven in motorcades, and cheered at rallies, a far cry from the mud and horror of Sevastopol just months before. After the United States, Pavlichenko visited Canada and Great Britain, continuing to rally support for the beleaguered Eastern Front. World leaders were polite but non-committal. It would take until June 1944 for the Allies to finally open the second front she had pleaded for. Still, Lyudmila's tour was a personal triumph and a propaganda coup for the Soviets. By the time she returned home in late 1942, Pavlichenko had been awarded the Gold Star of a Hero of the Soviet Union, the nation's highest honour, and the Order of Lenin, and she was promoted to the rank of Major. She was actually the only one of those 2,000 female snipers to receive the Hero of the Soviet Union award while still alive. Many others received it only posthumously. The simple Ukrainian girl who once dreamed of teaching history had now dined with presidents and been celebrated on 3 continents. After the war, Lyudmila Pavlichenko sought a return to normal life, but the transition was not easy. She never again saw combat after mid-1942. Instead, she spent the remainder of World War II training new snipers at a school near Moscow. By one account, Major Pavlichenko instructed 80 apprentice snipers, many of them young women like herself, who went on to tally over 2,000 enemy kills collectively by war's end. In effect, she multiplied her impact by passing on her deadly skills. When victory over Germany was secured in 1945, Pavlichenko, now 29, was finally able to complete her education. She returned to Kiev University and earned her history degree, then embarked on a quiet career as a researcher and historian for the Soviet Navy, and later the Soviet Committee of Veterans of War. Despite her public fame and accolades, the personal toll of Lyudmila's experiences emerged in peacetime. Like many frontline veterans, she bore invisible scars that never fully healed. The nightmares of countless lethal hunts and close calls haunted her nights. She had shouldered the loss of her husband and dozens of comrades. In an era with little concept of psychological counselling, Pavlichenko struggled with what we now recognise as post-traumatic stress. She suffered bouts of depression and reportedly alcoholism in the post-war years, retreating from the public eye. The Soviet government still trotted her out at commemorative events as a hero of the motherland. But once the fanfare ended, Lyudmila lived in relative obscurity on a modest military pension. The weight of her 309 kills, the memories of each trigger pull, was hers alone to bear. One friendship, however, endured the test of time. In 1957, over a decade after they last saw each other, Eleanor Roosevelt visited Moscow and made a point to reconnect with Lyudmila. Despite Cold War tensions, the Soviet authorities allowed the meeting. Eleanor travelled to a modest apartment, where she found her old friend considerably aged beyond her 41 years. Lyudmila's hair had turned white, and she carried a sadness in her eyes, but the two women embraced warmly. Under the gaze of Soviet officials, they managed to slip away for a few minutes to reminisce privately about the summer of 1942, even sharing laughter away from their minders. It was a poignant reunion that spoke to the genuine bond they had formed in wartime. For Lyudmila, seeing Eleanor again was a reminder that her sacrifices had bridged a divide between nations and touched another soul across the ocean. Lyudmila Pavlichenko passed away on October 10th, 1974, at the age of 58, after suffering a stroke. She was laid to rest with full military honours in Moscow's prestigious Novodevichy Cemetery, among heroes of the Soviet Union. In her honour, the USSR issued commemorative postage stamps, one in 1943 at the height of her fame, and another in 1976 after her death. Monuments and plaques were erected in Ukraine and Russia. The city of Sevastopol even named a street after her, fittingly not far from where Leonid Kitsenko had fallen during the siege. Historians acknowledge Pavlichenko as the most successful female sniper in history, and indeed one of the top snipers of World War II. Her record of 309 confirmed kills stands as a testament to her extraordinary skill and grit. Woody Guthrie's song about Miss Pavlichenko keeps her memory alive in music, recounting how the whole world will always love you for all time to come, and how like 300 Nazis fell by your gun. More than anything, Lyudmila Pavlichenko's legacy endures as an inspiration. She proved that courage, skill, and patriotism know no gender. At a time when women were often underestimated, she demanded to be judged by her actions, and then surpassed everyone's expectations. In the crucible of war, armed with only her sniper rifle and unwavering resolve, Lyudmila Pavlichenko fought not just for her homeland's survival, but for the respect and equality of all those capable of fighting for it. That, as much as her 309 confirmed kills, is why the legend of Lady Death lives on. Her story is a testament to the unyielding spirit of a woman who refused to be defined by anything but her talent and her courage.